I'm going to talk about the history of sound therapy, but not the totality for the world. I'm talking about sound therapies that I have used myself and actually use in my practice. So the ones I know the best. I do believe that the pedigree of these sound therapies is quite impressive. I can see why I ended up with them because the background is very solid scientifically, and the people involved are very integral as far as I know, including Dr. Porges for Polyvagal Theory. So let me start out. Hi, I'm Michael Westgate. Thank you for joining me. I've helped people with chronic pain for over 2 decades. I aim to help you say goodbye to pain and hello to a fully lived life. So we have this Dr. Alfred Tomatis, born in 1920, became a ear, nose, and throat doctor. He was a very inquisitive person and very open-minded, and what he noticed is that the people that had hearing problems also had trouble with other things, spelling and reading, and he was like, what's going on here? So he really looked into it, and he started to experiment. And one of the things that he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, you can't make sounds in your voice that you can't hear. And so basically what he says is you read with your ears. And anyone that has processing issues or learning disabilities, like I have dyslexia, those are the people he started to help first, is dyslexics and autistics. What he discovered is that fundamentally, dyslexia and autism is a sound processing disorder. It's in the brain itself. It's a neurological issue. It's not any of the other things that people used to think, like you're lazy, you don't want to work hard, or you're just being difficult, which is one of the things that was put on both those categories of people years ago. Just kind of an overview of some of the things he discovered is that high-frequency sounds will actually energize the brain. And then high-frequency sounds are highly correlated with human voice at a certain prosody. So the prosody being the tone, pitch, and rhythm of the voice. And so sounds in the environment that simulate those frequencies will be responded to in the same way. So his methods included listening to classical music, particularly from Mozart. So he actually decided that eventually that if you were to listen to one kind of music that would potentially positively shift your nervous system to a better state, Mozart is the end all of that. Other composers are also used in these programs, but Mozart is apparently the one that comes the closest to a kind of a perfect combination of sounds for a regulated nervous system because they're so rich in high frequencies. The other thing that Tomatis did is he used electronic devices to modify the music to emphasize certain frequencies and filter out others, which he found was, at least in the beginning, very therapeutic for certain people that were having certain processing challenges. This processing of filtering is gradually altered as the individual goes through the programs. And it's very intentional because they bring a certain kind of tolerance to that stimulus, right? So this is the issue, is you have a stimulus that is overloading you or putting you into dysregulation because the nervous system can't process it properly or in an effective way. So then if you expose someone to those frequencies in certain intervals, and then you go back to a more tolerable state, which is, probably low tones, and then back again to high tone, you start training the ear how to differentiate between them and also to be able to tolerate them without dysregulation. The other thing that he emphasizes is the mother's voice, especially in children that were being treated. What he would do is he would record the mother's voice and then play it back to the child in a very specific way and with filtering. And that was very powerful in shifting the neuroprocessing as well. What his theory was, and by the way, this has been backed up by a lot of people now, is that the emotional and psychological impact of the mother's voice is very significant. And it's especially important for calming a child when they're dysregulated. So then he would structure the listening sessions to gradually adapt to the listener's needs because not everyone's the same. And then he would train the ear to better process sound. And this would have a massive impact on the person's emotional and cognitive abilities. And basically what he was shooting for was nervous system resilience. And that's what I keep talking about in my course. And everything else I say, all the practices I ever mention have to do with elevating nervous system resilience so that it can have more capacity more often in more situations. That's what adaptability actually is. And what he discovered is that the real issue here is the nervous system's ability to organize and decide what's relevant to focus on. One of the major problems with people with processing disorders, and sensory processing disorders, which includes PTSD and includes even chronic illness, autoimmune disease, all have elements of processing disorder involved because they're all super stressed out. And the thing that happens with a person that is traumatized, AKA sensory processing challenge, they don't know how to organize the information coming in because they don't know how to not pay attention to everything, and especially certain things that become upsetting. And when you have a better regulated system, what it does is it automatically sorts out things for relevance, and then you're only focusing on the thing that matters the most. The other things are ignored. After Tomatis had become very established, there was a patient that showed up to work with him his name is Paul Madaal. He was severely dyslexic. It caused him absolute horrific stress in his life. It was so bad that he didn't finish high school. His parents were mad at him. Everyone could tell he was intelligent, but he couldn't perform in school. And they thought he was just lazy or rebellious. He didn't come to Tomatis until he was in his 20s. And he was, thinking like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm a total loser. I can't do anything properly. And my parents are frustrated and so on. What happened is that within 2 weeks of working with Tomatis, it completely altered his abilities. And Madaal was able to finish his high school diploma in record time because all of a sudden his brain worked correctly. And all these other things, his social difficulties cleared up largely, his ability to organize himself and decide what to focus on changed. And he was so excited about his transformation that he decided he wanted to go to school. He wanted to do what Tomatis did. I want to help people like me come about like Tomatis helped me. So he went to school for, I can't remember what degree he got, but he asked Tomatis, can I work with you? And he said, yes. So he mentored him. He brought him into the business. And then eventually, Dahl moved to Canada. And he opened centers in the United States as well. So then this man, Ron Minson, who was the chief of psychiatry at Presbyterian Medical Center in Denver, and also the head of behavioral science center at Mercy Medical Center. Him and his wife had lost their first child to sudden crib death. So they decided to adopt, and the daughter they adopted was initially happy baby, but it turned out she was severely dyslexic, and as soon as she entered school, she became very distressed because she couldn't function in that environment. Couldn't sound out letters, she couldn't do math, had difficulty understanding others, and had a very flat affect in her voice, which is a sign of low vagal tone, by the way. Parents were very concerned and very proactive. They tried all the conventional treatments they could come up with, tutors, speech therapists, special education. All these things were absolutely ineffective and only frustrated Erica more. As she became an adolescent, her struggles were worse and worse because she was falling further behind. She became depressed and rebellious and really was acting out very severely during that time. And then they tried medical approaches like Ritalin and antidepressants, which only made her worse. And she didn't want to be on them because she said they made her feel awful. So then, luckily for this family, one of Ron's colleagues had heard about the Tomatis Method and said, maybe you ought to consider this. And at first, because he was a psychiatrist and was very kind of, embedded in the medical model, he's like, oh, I'm not going to go to some sound therapy idiocy. But then his daughter became suicidal, and he's like, I better do this. And when they did the intake, I think over the phone, they said, your daughter can't do this unless you're with her because she's so dysregulated that we don't think she'll be able to finish the program. But if you're with her, we think that you'll help regulate her enough that will work. So he did it with her. So after 15 sessions, this was 3 weeks, and this includes what I described before. So she's listening to modified music in a sequential way that's tailored to her condition. Her father's with her. And I do believe they also may have recorded her mother's voice, but they didn't say specifically. And in 15 sessions, that's 3 weeks time, Erica experienced immediate alleviation of depression, elimination of excessive sleeping during the day, a surge in mental and physical energy within days, enhanced ability to express thoughts and feelings. Her sleep-wake cycle was corrected. So now she slept at night instead of not being able to sleep at night and only sleeping during the day. Improved mood regulation, learning, and differentiation skills. And she was able to be calm and she was able to be social appropriately, which was not true before. And she was also more able to articulate in open communication in vulnerable way with her father, especially. Ron, who had no observable negatives in his nervous system, reported that he noticed that all his cognitive functions improved, even though he wasn't injured or traumatized or anything, and that he was able to think faster, remember things better, learn faster, and also he felt more at ease. And the other thing his daughter was able to express to him is that all the other therapies beside this made her feel alienated because she couldn't relate to them, she didn't understand them, and her body hated them, and she felt helpless from that. But this therapy was different, and her body liked it immediately. So as you can imagine, Ron was so blown away that he quit his jobs and he started his own company. And he founded a company called Integrative Listening Systems. And he took the science and he went a little deeper with it. And what he found is that a combination of modified music in the same way that the Tomatis Method does, including movement, cognitive exercises, and brain and body integration exercises, which is basically therapeutic play, and also something called bone conduction. He thought even more effective, even though he's incredibly grateful to Tomatis. And that system that he developed is called the focus system. He also developed a system called Listening Pro, which I have not had any experience with yet, but that's kind of similar to listening to your mother's voice thing. You actually hear your own voice, and through that you can modify and refine how you hear words and how to do it accurately, which is actually a social engagement exercise. So then, after he established this company and started to help people like his daughter recover, both adults and children, he met Dr. Stephen Porges, and in 2017, they decided to partner so that they could license and deliver Dr. Porges' Safe and Sound protocol. Now, I'm going to go into that. So Dr. Porges was the discoverer of HRV, heart rate variability. The reason that's so significant is it's the best medical measurement of health that you have. If someone has high HRV, it's likely they're going to live longer, happier, and that they're not going to get sick. If they have a super low HRV, they're usually depressed and ill, and they often die young, and they also have trouble with relationships. And through that measurement, he was able to discover that how sound affected people's regulation. And he created this protocol to help people that have difficulty processing sound. And he started with autistics, but then he soon discovered, just like Tomatis did, that the sound therapy actually helped people with all kinds of problems that had to do with nervous system regulation. Okay, so let's talk real quick about what the Safe and Sound protocol is. He focused on emotional behavioral challenges, but it's really the same thing as processing nervous system. He knew that. So the Safe and Sound protocol is grounded in polyvagal theory, which meaning that the whole point is to stimulate the vagus nerve in a way that impacts our ability to regulate stress and emotions more effectively for our health. And just like Tomatis uses filtered music that gradually modifies what you're hearing over the program, which is usually a 5-day protocol, so that it adapts your ears to human voice without being dysregulated. And that's the whole thing, is that when we are traumatized or, stressed out so much that we're stuck in those survival systems, our hearing system can no longer accurately hear human voices without being stressed out. That's why being social is hard, because if you're hearing a social voice, and even a good one that's even regulated, but your nervous system says, I can't handle this, then you don't socialize properly because you're acting kind of like either overwhelmed or even a disgust response or just a pain response to someone socially, which is not a very good feedback loop for the person that is talking to you. And again, the goal here is to retrain your auditory system to process sound in a more regulated way. That's the goal. And hypersensitivities are directly related to your difficulty of relating to and processing human speech or sounds in that range. And of course, like I said, so if you do this, it turns your social engagement system on, and you will be automatically, intuitively more synchronized socially if that's the case. The other thing that's really interesting about the Safe and Sound protocol is it opens up healing potential. So what Porges explains is that when you get this remodification of your brain and its processing of sound, it's a top-down regulatory result, because all of a sudden you're not getting all these danger signals or the interpretation of it all the time from your nervous system, because low-tone sounds like the rumbling of the earthquake can set off someone more if their nervous system isn't balanced than someone else who would just notice, I don't really like that feeling, rather than, oh my God, I'm in fear now. You can imagine that if your nervous system continues to interpret the environment is exponentially dangerous all the time, it's really hard to come out of that and heal because you're always jacked up. So sounds like, a car passing the house, that rumble of a truck, that could set someone off with a compromised system. The sound of an elevator could. There's all kinds of potential, those sort of deep tone brrr kind of things that can do that. I forgot to mention this, sorry. The other thing that Ron Minson discovered is that if you stimulate the skull, he didn't discover this, but we hear with our skull. It's not just the eardrum, it's the bones in our head. And so if you stimulate that, it speeds up the adaptation and it speeds up the healing. So that's why over-the-ear headphones actually vibrate the skull as well as the eardrums. But the focus system had on the headphones, it has a device in the headphone itself that's strapped on the top that will vibrate your skull and then speed up the effectiveness. The Safe and Sound protocol is now considered the first step of this sound therapy protocol. So you start with the Safe and Sound to establish a capacity to feel safe more often. But then you have to exercise that capacity through practices. And that's why I talk about practices all the time, because no matter what you do therapeutically, if you need to exercise that capacity over and over again to expand it. So what the focus system does is it takes that foundational stimulation and reorganization of the Safe and Sound protocol, and then it builds on it and goes into all kinds of sensory processing integration. So, and it does that by targeting the basic and primary sensory systems. So hearing, so it has modified music, vestibular, which is balance and orientation, and also proprioceptive awareness, which means the awareness of how your body feels at any given moment and in space. And it does that by having you do core exercises, things like bouncing a ball against the wall and catching it, throwing and catching things with someone else, or you have a ball on a string and you kind of hit it and it comes back to you, or you have it spin around you and you try to dodge it. What you do is you gradually increase the amount of stimulus you have and the challenge level with the music. And then over time, it helps integrate body and brain connection. It also helps the brain areas talk to each other better. Then when the sound comes into, or the different stimulus, because it's not just sound, it could be sensation on your skin or temperature. When it comes in, it's able to be sorted properly and allow you to operate in that environment of multisensory coming at you without blowing a circuit. The end result as you go through the program, the focus is that you develop higher cognitive functions such as attention and concentration, memory, and problem solving, because all the other systems are calm and regulated and working properly. So therefore, because you can't have higher brain function if lower level development is not complete. And for people that have had really difficult childhoods, anyone that has major stress in their childhood has likely missed certain developmental stages of growing up in their nervous system. And the thing that's incredible about the focus system, and I can speak personally about this because I've done both these systems all the way through, it's incredible how different you feel in your environment once you start really getting into this program. Because I have dyslexia, but through the focus system and SSP as well, and a little bit of neurofeedback, I bet that if I was tested, I wouldn't even test as dyslexic anymore, because I can spell better, I can type better, I can regulate my emotions better, I can sleep better, I can learn faster, I can focus on multiple things at once without blowing out. It's pretty amazing. And all the while, by the way, you're actually becoming more coordinated and more body aware. I mean, it's a pretty good deal. And the way all these systems work is it promotes neuroplasticity in the direction of regulation. So that's what we want, period, in our practices. It's also much more holistic. We're not thinking about drugs here. We're not looking at surgeries or anything else in that category. What we're looking at is bottom-up repair or enhancement of certain developmental stages that, like I said, we may have missed, or stress and or trauma in our adult life may have knocked those systems down. They may have worked well before, but all that stress has kind of blown out the circuits. In the real world applications of all this, by improving sensory processing and integration, individuals can better engage with their environment and interact more effectively with others, right? So and also learn more easily and so on. So, and in terms of conditions, so this sort of approach, and there are other systems, by the way, I just don't know them intimately, so I'm not saying that this is the only systems that are good, but it really covers a lot of ground in terms of who it would help. So difficulties in attention, sensory processing, and something like autism or PTSD can be benefit from these things. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how polyvagal theory talks about why this works. So sound, rhythm, and melody sort of thing. So remember, I said before that the music is perceived by the nervous system as a voice. So what you want is you want a voice in the music or the sound in your environment to be more melodic, rhythmical, and make you feel safe enough that you could be socially relaxed, right? So that's one of the things that you want. But the same is true, as I showed you today, as human voices, because if they're talking or singing and they're highly regulated, then your nervous system gets the message there's a safe human nearby that's super regulated. I can relax more. And certain nature sounds will mimic that, except for some people. Like the ocean waves was too stimulated for some, but others were like, oh, that was nice. The crickets and the rain and the river also felt really good to most. Just keep that in mind. And just remember that what is assessing your sound is your neuroception. So that's your automatic assessment of safety or danger. And according to Porges, sound is the #1 way in which your nervous system assesses that. That doesn't mean there aren't other ways. Visual is important too. But the #1 and the fastest is sound. And I would actually add to that vibration, because we hear with our bones. So if you feel a vibration of an earthquake, it's not just the sound. You're going to hear it in the ground. You're going to feel it in the ground, right? And your body's going to like, whoa, I got to get out of here. So this is the thing, though, is that whatever state your body turns on is fundamentally your psychological state and your mood and your focus. So this is critical. Like if you know that certain sounds put you into a danger state, you're going to know that you're going to have narrow focus because it's going to be tunnel vision, if any at all. And if you're shut down, you can't see anything. You can't hear anyone, so human voices are hard to interpret, and you can't function very well. So it's good to know that. And that certain sounds trigger survival states in people differently. The other thing that I want to emphasize again is about the mother's voice. So the first thing that an infant is oriented for when they're born is their mother's voice. That's genetically programmed. And every mammal's like this. They want to hear their mother's voice because that tells them that there's nurturing and protection and love right here, right? That's what it says to the nervous system. And the primary thing that regulates the child's stress level is the mother's voice prosody. So if it's prosodic, which means she's regulated, the child's going to be fine no matter what, unless there's some other damage to their nervous system. And that's what they rely on when they are exploring the world. So they go out into the world, incrementally, starting to get a bigger understanding and a bigger interaction with the world. And if they get upset, what they're going to come back for is the physical contact and the tone of her voice saying, you're okay, and everything's fine. And then also don't forget about our friend, the vagal nerve. So the vagus nerve is bidirectional communication between the brain and the body. Remember, the nerve itself doesn't do anything. It just relays messages. So what we're trying to enhance in vagal tone is the rhythm of the message that goes back and forth from the brain to the body, which is a certain rhythm of wellness and safety. That's what we're trying to enhance in everything we're doing and talking about and in these practices. And it matters. So that's what we're doing when you hear these sounds that your body doesn't like, the message in the body is low vagal tone. When it likes it, then it's high vagal tone. And remember, the complementary practices that I've shown you are things like breath work. The pranayama stuff we did is a combination of breath and singing, so to speak. Yoga, breath and movement, meditation, all these things, and nature bathing, all these things can lead to better regulation. Well, here's the other thing is that when you correct your sound perception, you're more able to benefit from sounds that typically help regulate people instead of dysregulating you. So you get more resources. The more functional you get, the more resources you have, which is really interesting how that works. I also recommend that with this awareness, do your best to create a therapeutic environment in your home and in other situations, and maybe office at home or office outside of home. Make sure that environment is sound-wise the best it can be for you. If you found this content helpful, please like and subscribe. You can look forward to more videos about how to overcome chronic illness and chronic pain.